down the stairway toward immigration and customs. The downstairs area was also glassed in, and Swamiji could see more than 50 devotees and friends waiting eagerly. As they again caught sight of him, they cried out as a group, "Hare Krishna!" Swamiji looked wonderful to them, tanned from his 5 months in India, younger and more sprightly. He smiled and triumphantly held up his hands in greeting. Devotees were crying in happiness. As Swamiji stood in line at the customs inspection point, he could hear the devotees' kirtan, the glass walls only partially masking the sound. The customs officials ignored the chanting, although the connection between the Saffron Road passenger and the joyful chanters was not hard to see. Swamiji waited in line, glancing now and then at his chanting disciples. He had only one suitcase to place on the table before the inspector. Methodically, the inspector went through the contents: cotton saris for the girls, silk garlands for the Jagannath deities, kartals, saffron dhotis and kurtas, a coconut grater, and little bottles of Ayurvedic medicine. "What are these?" the inspector probed. The little bottles looked strange, and he called for another inspector. A delay. Swamiji's disciples became perturbed by the petty-minded custom inspectors poking through Swamiji's things. Now opening the tightly corked bottles, sniffing and checking the contents. The inspectors seemed satisfied. Swamiji tried to close the suitcase, but he couldn't work the zipper. Another delay. Devotees, still anxiously chanting, watched as he managed to zip his suitcase closed with the help of the gentleman behind him. He walked toward the glass door. The devotees began chanting madly. As he stepped through the door, a devotee blew a conch shell that resounded loudly throughout the hall. Devotees garlanded him, and everyone pressed in, handing him flowers. He entered their midst as a beloved father enters and reciprocates the embrace of his loving children. Srila Prabhupada ki. That's how you greet the spiritual master. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 8, entitled Narayan Kavacha Shield. Text 18, is it? 19. Dvaipayano Bhagavan Aprabodad. Dvaipayano Bhagavan Aprobodad. Dvaipayano Bhagavan Aprabodad. Bhagavan Aprabodad. Buddhas tu Pashanda Gana Pramadat. Buddhastu Pashanda Gana Pramadat. Kalki Kale Kala Malat Prapatu. Kalki Kale Kala Malat Prapatu. Dharmavana Yoru. So Dharmavana Yoru. Kritavatara. Dharmavana Yoru. Kritavatara. Dvaipayano Bhagavan. So Dvaipayano Bhagavan Aprabodad. Dvaipayano Bhagavan Aprabodad. Buddhastu Pashanda Gana Pramadat. Buddhastu Pashanda Gana Pramadat. Kalki Kale Kala Malat Prapatu. Kalki Kale Kala Malat Prapatu. Dharmavana Yoru Kritavatara. Dharmavanayoru Kritavatara Dvaipayano Bhagavan Aprabodhad Buddhastupa Shandagana Pramadat Kalki Kale Kalamalat Prapatu Dharmavanayoru Kritavatara Dvaipayano Bhagavana Prabodhad Buddhastupa Shandagana Pramadat Kalki Kale Kalamalat Prapatu Dharmavanayoru Kritavatara. Anyone else? Ladies? Dvaipayana, Srila Vyasadeva, the giver of all Vedic knowledge. Bhagavan, the most powerful incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aprabodhat, from ignorance of the Shastra. Buddha too, also Lord Buddha. Pashandagana, of atheists creating disillusionment for the innocent persons. Pramadat, from the madness. Kalki, Lord Kalki, the incarnation of Keshava. Kale, of this Kali Yuga. Kalamalat, from the darkness of the age. Prapatu, may he protect. Dharma Avanaya, for the protection of religious principles. Uru, very great. Krita Avatara, he took an incarnation. May the personality of Godhead in his incarnation as Vyasadeva protect me from all kinds of ignorance resulting from the absence of Vedic knowledge. May Lord Buddhadev protect me from activities opposed to Vedic principles and from laziness that causes one to madly forget the Vedic principles of knowledge and ritualistic action. May Kalki Dev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead who appeared as an incarnation to protect religious principles, protect me from the dirt of the age of Kali. Please repeat, may the Personality of Godhead In his incarnation as Vyasadeva, protect me from all kinds of ignorance resulting from the absence of Vedic knowledge. May Lord Buddhadev protect me from activities opposed to Vedic principles and from laziness that causes one to madly forget the Vedic principles of knowledge and ritualistic action. May Kalkidev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appeared as an incarnation to protect religious principles, protect me from the dirt of the age of Kali. Srila Prabhupada's purport. This verse mentions various incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who appear for various purposes. Srila Vyasadeva Mahamuni compiled the Vedic literature for the benefit of all human society. If one wants to be protected from the reactions of ignorance, even in this age of Kali, one may consult the books left by Srila Vyasadeva, namely the four Vedas, Sama, Yajur, Rig and Atharva, the 108 Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra, Brahma Sutra, Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahapurana, Vyasadeva's commentary on the Brahma Sutra, and the other 17 Puranas. Only by the mercy of Srila Vyasadeva do we have so many volumes of transcendental knowledge to save us from the clutches of ignorance. As described by Srila Jayadev Goswami in his Dashavatara Stotra, Lord Buddha apparently decried the Vedic knowledge. Nindasi yagya vidir ahaha shruti jatam sadaya hridaya darshita pashu gatam keshavadrita Buddha sharira jaya jagadisha hare. The mission of Lord Buddha was to save people from the abominable activity of animal killing and to save the poor animals from being unnecessarily killed. When Pashandis were cheating by killing animals on the plea of sacrificing them in Vedic yagas, the Lord said, if the Vedic injunctions allows animal killing, I do not accept the Vedic principles. Thus he actually saved people who acted according to Vedic principles. One should therefore surrender to Lord Buddha so that he can help one avoid misusing the injunctions of the Vedas. The Kalki avatar is the fierce incarnation who vanquishes the class of the atheists born in this age of Kali. Now, in the beginning of Kali Yuga, many irreligious principles are in effect, and as Kali Yuga advances, many pseudo-religious principles will certainly be introduced, and people will forget the real religious principles enunciated by Lord Krishna before the beginning of Kali Yuga, namely principles of surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Unfortunately, because of Kali Yuga, foolish people do not surrender to the lotus feet of Krishna. Even most people who claim to belong to the Vedic system of religion are actually opposed to the Vedic principles. Every day they manufacture a new type of dharma on the plea that whatever one manufactures is also a path of liberation. Atheistic men generally say yatamat tatapat. According to this view, there are hundreds and thousands of different opinions in human society, and each opinion is a valid religious principle. This philosophy of rascals has killed the religious principles mentioned in the Vedas, and such philosophies will become increasingly influential as Kali Yuga progresses. In the last stage of Kali Yuga, Kalkidev, the fierce incarnation of Keshava, will descend to kill all the atheists and will save only the devotees of the Lord. Om Aganitamaranda Shyagananjana Salakaya Chakshurmalitanmina Tajmar Shigurave Namaha Kam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Grimya Kripata Mahamvande Shigrim Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. May the personality of Godhead in his incarnation as Vyasadeva protect me from all kinds of ignorance resulting from the absence of Vedic knowledge. May Lord Buddhadev protect me from activities opposed to Vedic principles and from laziness that causes one to madly forget the Vedic principles of knowledge and ritualistic action. May Kalkidev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead who appeared as an incarnation to who protect religious principles, protect me from the dirt of the age of Kali. In the 10th canto, or in the Krishna book, we see there's a situation where one of Krishna's sons, Aniruddha, kidnaps. Who does he kidnap? Yeah, what's her name? Usha. And it's not Duryodhana's daughter, is it? It's Banasura's daughter. Maybe that's another situation. If it is, I don't know about that one. But Aniruddha, the kidnapping of... so it wasn't so much a kidnapping, seen from Banasura's point of view, it was a kidnapping, but it was more of a different situation. So Aniruddha is an expansion of the Lord. He's not just some little kind of upstart. So the Lord, if he decides to do something, then no human being can stand in the way. So this wasn't like some kind of mundane, eloping affair. This was Aniruddha, the personality of Godhead, and Usha. They had decided they wanted to be together. Banasura wasn't happy with that. So Aniruddha, he took up some rod and he started to fight with Banasura's guards. Now, Banasura had received a benediction from Lord Shiva that when he wanted to fight, then he would have how many arms? 1,000. So how that fits into your body physically, I don't know. I would imagine it would be a bit hard to kind of get around if you had 1,000 arms. You'd be like falling all over the place. So it's probably not, in some kind of gross type of imagination we can imagine. Just like, I remember Srila Prabhupada's disciple Sadhuputta, he was expressing how he pitied the challenge that the ISKCON artists had to paint Brahmas with the many, many heads. Because our Brahmas get 4 heads, so you can see, okay, one each direction, but Brahmas that have got hundreds or millions of heads, he said the only thing they could conceive of was painting them like Christmas trees, so many, many heads like this. So these things are beyond our conception. So we shouldn't necessarily dismiss them simply because we can't conceive of it, because so many things we cannot conceive. Even, before the invention of the microscope, we couldn't conceive of what is a germ looks like, what is a cell, how a cell is composed of. Even when they come up with the Darwin theory about everything coming from matter, they didn't understand the complicated construction of one cell. They just see they had some limited instrument that they could see some little blob, and they thought, oh yeah, okay, it's just kind of coming from that. Some order came from chaos. But actually, when they get a bigger microscope, then they're looking in to see actually there's order in there already, such a complicated order that we cannot conceive of how this could come about. So ultimately what they're doing, they're backing themselves into a corner where they're going to prove the intelligent designer behind it all. So that's good, let them do that. And we'll let them do the hard work. And then we'll just come in and take the knowledge that they've used, and for their own benefit. I remember one time I was in South Africa, and there was Rath Yatra festival, and they had many stalls. After the parade, they had some festival, and Jayatwita Maharaj was answering questions. Now, if anybody knows Jayatwita Maharaj, he's a very expert debater. He's not likely to be defeated very easily at all, because he's very convinced and he's very fixed in how to present arguments. So one person said to him, "Oh, you Hare Krishnas, you criticize the scientists, but then you utilize all the things that they make." He says, "Yes." He didn't disagree with him. He says, "Yes, we Hare Krishnas do criticize the scientists, and we utilize everything that they make, because somebody's got to do them some good." So we use these things in Krishna's service. So just because we may criticize their philosophy or their understanding. Doesn't mean to say that we won't utilize things in Krishna's service. And Krishna, he's the greatest scientist, because whatever the scientists are discovering, Krishna already created it. It was already there, like Isaac's law of gravity, Isaac Newton's law of gravity. He never created the law of gravity. He just came up with an idea of when you see an apple falling from the tree, the law of, they should call this a law of gravity. But it was already existing, millions and millions, billions of years before he came around. And then he sticks his name on it. So this is the pride that we have to avoid as well. As soon as we do something, we stick our name on it. We're trying to make a name for ourselves. And this is explained in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that in Kali Yuga it becomes like the world of names. We stick a name on something. We call a product a name. Even if the product changes, we still call it the same name. Have you ever experienced you buy something which you used to like, and then you got it and you think, well, this is like a pale reflection of what it used to be. You're just buying a name now. So this is a cheating society. And so just going back to that story. So ultimately what happened was Aniruddha was arrested, and Krishna came to release him, and he ended up fighting on the battlefield with Banasura. And the Banasura had this boon of fighting with many arms, but he also had another boon where he could call, because he was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, then he called Shiva to fight on his behalf. And Lord Shiva invoked his weapon of destruction, but at the time of the universal annihilation, then Lord Shiva invokes a weapon of destruction which is called Shiva Jwara. So everything was becoming extremely hot, and everyone was becoming perturbed that there was going to be annihilation of the universe. But Lord Krishna, he invoked Narayana Jwara, which caused everything to become cold. When you say calm? Yeah, it was a bit colder than calm. He certainly calmed it down, but it was freezing. And then Banasura, he and Lord Shiva, they both prostrated themselves to Lord Krishna, accepting that he was the Supreme Lord. So here we see Indra. He's being challenged by the demons, the Asuras. And because of their empowerment by their master, who is known as Shukracharya, then they felt very confident of victory. They became very powerful. Prior to this, they didn't consider their spiritual master, but then they took shelter of him, and he empowered them. They became empowered by their chastity to that, but their motivation wasn't divine. It was a demonic motivation. Simply they wanted to overthrow the demigods so they could enjoy without having to go through the usual channels, which is a good lesson for all of us. We should just be patient and wait on Krishna giving his mercy. We can't force the issue. The only way we can force the issue is, as Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master says, don't try to see God, but act in such a way that God will see you. So we attract Krishna's attention by our sincere devotional service, not by throwing a hissy fit or by, some kind of word jugglery or whatever. So Krishna is actually attracted by unmotivated and uninterrupted devotional service. What's that verse that explains that? Anya Bilashita Sunyam Gyana Karmadhyanavitam Anukuyena Krishna Anushilanam Bhakti Uttama. So in the course of trying to be, we may find in the course of trying to be following in the footsteps of the pure devotees who have come before us, we may find that we were thinking we were performing pure devotional service, but actually it was motivated. And that's okay, because we have to learn, haven't we? We have to learn somewhere. It's not like as soon as we walk in the door, someone says, okay, perform devotional service. All right, no problem. We don't even know what it means. We don't know what it means to surrender. Although we're actually surrendering all the time, we just choose to not surrender to Krishna. Sometimes we surrender to Krishna, sometimes we surrender to Maya. So ultimately we want to come to the point where we realize there's nothing for us in this world and we just want to surrender to Krishna. No one concludes with that. And sometimes this is through the through hearing. This material world is a place of suffering, and then taking shelter of Krishna. Or hearing is a place of suffering, seeing that is a place of suffering, and then taking shelter of Krishna and not wanting to get involved. Or hearing, seeing, experiencing, and then taking shelter of Krishna. Or hearing, seeing, experiencing, and still not taking shelter of Krishna. So in Kali Yuga, most of us are in this fourth category, which is not known as the fourth class, it's known as 10th class, to show that there's a big difference, because repeatedly even though we suffer, our ignorance prevents us from really taking shelter in Krishna. But don't despair, because the process of Krishna consciousness, that cleanses away the dirt of the mind. This is the great hope for Kali Yuga, that even those in the most dense darkness of ignorance can be elevated to the topmost stage of love of Godhead simply by taking to this chanting process and the process of devotional service under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. So therefore the spiritual master, his instructions are more important to us than anything else. This is the mood of the disciple. The spiritual master's instructions are not they're not for well, I'll take this one, but I'll leave that one. We have to take all of them. Sometimes we can admit, well, okay, I just don't feel like I can make that move just now, but then we have to see, okay, how do I work towards that? Just like in order to get a job as perhaps a brain surgeon, then you can't just desire to do it and then go and do it. You have to make the necessary steps. We have to become qualified bit by bit. So the process of devotional service, including all aspects of it, such as devotee association, satsanga tyag, renouncing the things which are detrimental to our progress, and taking prasad, all these different aspects, reading, chanting, then these things will gradually purify us from all the inauspicious items. In this very act which we're engaging in just now, regular reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, does anybody know the Sanskrit for this one? The Bhagavata Seva, yeah? That's it. So by regular hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, then gradually, bit by bit, all that is inauspicious within the heart is reduced practically to zero, and all that is left is loving devotional service that becomes established as an irrevocable fact. So it's not that, okay, one day we're a pure devotee and then we decide, no, I think I'll go back to materialistic life. When it's established as an irrevocable fact, it means we don't go back. Prabhupada explains this once bitten, twice shy. Just as when one goes back to the spiritual world, we don't come back again. Because in the spiritual world, or in spiritual consciousness, then we're fully aware, we're fully in knowledge. And the soul is in knowledge already. And the spiritual master is there to remind us who we are, where we belong, and what is that relationship we have with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So just as the demons are taking shelter in Shukracharya to be empowered to conquer over the demigods, then the demigods being the devas, or godly, then they naturally take shelter in Krishna. Sometimes when they're enjoying, they forget, like us. Sometimes we're enjoying and we forget our duties, we forget our the knowledge which we have heard or have accumulated. But then we start to see, this is leading to a suffering situation, so therefore let me once again re-establish this knowledge and let me seek the protection of the Lord. So this Narayan Kavacha shield is not only protecting the demigods. Lord Indra here is, this is Indra speaking, isn't it? I think it's Indra speaking. Huh? Vishwarup. Oh, he's explaining the potency of it. So, so this has been. This is the purpose of the devotee association, that he's preaching the glories of this Nisayana So this is also our position, that we simultaneously take that protection from the Lord and we try to explain it to others. Sometimes this term preaching, it can be seen very negatively in the modern day, because it's like, I'm talking down to you, I'm condescending to you, I know more and you know less, I'm in knowledge, you're an ignorant fool. So people don't like that. And of course we have explained before, and we've heard many times, this word prachar is a real word. Prachar means that we've absorbed so much Krishna consciousness that it's overflowing, and therefore we're sharing that with others. So it's interesting when he says here that may Lord Buddhadev protect from activities opposed to Vedic principles and from laziness that causes one to madly forget the principles of knowledge and ritualistic action. And Prabhupada says here in the purport that one should therefore surrender to Lord Buddha so that he can help one avoid misusing the injunctions of the Vedas. So does that mean we should become Buddhists? We pop down to Sami Ling and we all join there because we just read this in the Bhagavatam today. Does that mean we should become Buddhists? I'll read that again. One should therefore surrender to Lord Buddha so that he can help one avoid one misusing the injunctions of the Vedas. So the situation is that people were rubber stamping themselves as followers of the Vedic culture, but they were called pashandis. What does a pashandi mean? Offender. So they're taking the knowledge given in the Shastra, they're misusing it, and they're doing some nonsense and trying to use some slokas to justify it. This is a demoniac thing. Pashandi, offenders of the Lord. Better they just don't even bother with the Vedas. You know, if they're going to do their sinful activities, then don't try to justify it with a Vedic sloka. So we should be careful also. This is what it's saying here, surrender to Lord Buddha, because Lord Buddha, he was saying, okay, well, if he so cleverly preached to them to give up following the Shastras, because they weren't actually following him anyway, and in effect he got them to follow the principles of the Shastras. So this is sometimes known as Veda Rata, that they're attached to ritualistic performances without knowing the purpose behind them. And there's another term for that. Does anybody know that one? Toksja? Yamagrahan. That's it's another one which is too much attachment to or too much neglect of the rules and regulations without understanding the purpose behind them. And did you have a different one? Karma Kanda, yeah. So they're taking the Vedas for some kind of materialistic benefit and not really getting the ultimate benefit which they're meant for. So this is also like considered to be attached to the flowery words of the Vedas. Flowers means that they're going to produce some flowers or some fruits. Fruit of activity. So here, Lord Buddha is referred to in terms of not that we should surrender to him as a Buddhist, because once again we simply be rubber stamping yourself. You know, I'm a Buddhist. And so just as prior they were saying, oh, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Vedic follower. But they weren't a Vedic follower at all, because they were pasandis, they were offenders, they were killing animals under the name of some obscure verse that they dug up. So this is explained also later on. Here Prabhupada mentions that the Kalki avatar is a fierce incarnation who vanquished the class of atheists born as Kali Yuga. And at the beginning of Kali Yuga, many irreligious principles are in effect. And as Kali Yuga advances, many pseudo-religious principles will certainly be introduced, and people will forget the real religious principles enunciated by Lord Krishna before the beginning of Kali Yuga. So this can be seen as people being almost horrified to hear the regulative principles. When they say, "Oh, I like to see you guys chanting and dancing on the street. I like your food. I like your artwork and your exotic lifestyle. What's it all about?" So in the course of explaining the philosophy, they discover the 4 regs, and they think, "Oh, this is not possible." Or sometimes even think, I explained before, one time I was on Sankirtan in Edinburgh, and I had one so-called religious person approached me. He had his girlfriend in his arm, a cigarette in his mouth, and he could smell drink from him, and he was going into McDonald's. So all he needed was a scratch card, and he had the 4 regulative principles all beat in one go. And he came up to me, he chastised me, and he says, "You're an offender against God." I says, "Why is that?" He says, "I've read your books, because you follow these 4 regulative principles." And they say, "This is an insult to God. He's given us this life to enjoy, and by you not enjoying it, you're insulting God." Now, in one sense, yeah, we agree. Krishna did give us this life to enjoy, but Prabhupada explains we don't know how to enjoy. What we are enjoying now is our suffering later. They're only seeing the here and now. They don't have that wisdom, and that wisdom is there in the Vedas. It's like we see that Krishna explains in Bhagavad-Gita that which is like nectar in the beginning is like poison in the end. Why do you think there's vanaprastha and sannyas? Or as women get older, then the family grow up and they become like a widow, because everybody then wants to just, as a devotee, we want to fully engage in Krishna consciousness and minimize any distractions. So of course we have to go through certain things in life for our purification, and if we go through each ashram properly, then each ashram is instrumental in our purification. So as long as we're rightly situated in each of them, and the constant thing which is there is Krishna Das, that we're eternal servant of Krishna. Naham viprona chana rapti napi vaishuna suddhanaham varnina chagri aptana vanastu yatirva kintu proja nikala paramananda purnabhatabhya gopi bhartu padakamalayur dasa dasana das. So Lord Chaitanya quotes this verse. He says, "No, I am neither a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. I'm not a Sudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya or Brahmin. I'm none of these things, but I'm eternal servant of the servants of the milkmaids of Vraja." So this is Lord Chaitanya telling us what is the constant thing in the devotee's life. As long as we're devotee of Krishna, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Grihi Tako Bani Tako Na Take Janjal. Prabhupada also says, that as long as one is fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, then that is the main thing. But because people do not know what is Krishna consciousness, then sometimes they just see externally. And materialists, they don't have that wisdom of these transcendental literatures, so they just think of the here and now. And even if they believe in an afterlife, their knowledge is so much stolen by illusion that they can't figure out that they can't even figure out their own scriptures. As you sow, so shall you reap. They don't understand it. They don't have someone who can explain their own scriptures to them, because even the people who are in a position to explain it are also Kali Chelas. They're also disciples of Kali. And to some degree, we're all, a part of this Kali Chela parampara. But now we're moving into trying to be members of the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya and become disciples of a worthy cause. And this is also seen that for the devotees, then what the non-devotees are interested in, that's night-time to us. We're not interested in that. And what they are not interested in, that's daytime for us. and vice versa. They're not interested in what we're interested in. So although externally it seems like we're doing the same thing as them, we live in a house, we drive a car, we eat meals, we wear clothes, things like that. It just seems like we're just the same as anyone else, except for maybe a little bit different style. But actually our whole purpose, our intention is different. Our intention is to get out of this world, not simply just try to hang about here and make it a better place for ourselves. Of course, because we respect everything as Krishna's property, or at least we should do, therefore we keep our living spaces clean and tidy, and we try to look after whatever Krishna gives us in our service. We look after it as Krishna's property. And we see everything as Krishna's property. So this term, Yatomat Tatupat, is the basis of many bogus philosophies. Does anybody know what this Yatomat Tatupat means? Yeah, Yatomat Tatupat. Whatever path you follow, it leads to the same destination. And of course, that is not a very logical thing. It just happens to be in Sanskrit, so people think it means something. But anyone can make up some Sanskrit sloka, and then we have to follow it just because it's in Sanskrit. If we make up some Sanskrit sloka saying the moon's made of cheese, does that mean that we should believe it? If it was, then some of the devotees would be working hard to get to the moon because they love cheese. You'd maybe see a few cows on it as well if you had a big powerful telescope. So just because it's in Sanskrit, it doesn't mean to say it is bona fide. It's an interesting thing. It's quite funny. At least I found it funny. So I was with one devotee. He didn't live in a temple, and he didn't really necessarily have any ashram training. Or if he did, then he must have been absent during the back to classes. But we were discussing Krishna consciousness, and they came up with something. I says, well, that's not in the Shastra. And he says, no, I heard it. I says, where did you hear it from? He told me he heard it from some Krishna cartoon. And then he showed me, and so she's going to tell me So just like, if someone asks you, say a devotee says something you're a bit unsure of, you say, well, can you show me where that is in Shastra? And then we show them and say, okay, I accept it now. That's standard. Like someone says something, we would used to do that. And sometimes it becomes a bit tit for tat. Devotees be like, okay, where's that in Shastra? You try to catch each other out. But anyway, it wasn't like that. It was just like, I heard this thing which was, to my understanding, it wasn't Sampradaya. And I heard it in some little Krishna cartoon. And then his proof was to sit me down and show me it. I says, well, it doesn't matter what you show me. It's not in the Shastra. You need to show me in the Shastra, not in some video. So it was interesting that sometimes devotees, just because it appears to be some Krishna conscious thing, that they accept something. So therefore we have to be careful and keep our consciousness, keep our activities, our motivations in line with the Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. And of course, when we join this Krishna conscious movement, we join with baggage. We may have physically left so many things behind, our house, our car, our video games, or whatever other things we were attached to. We may have physically left them behind, but have we left them behind in the heart? Just like when we get up in the morning, we come to the temple, physically we're here, but sometimes the mind's still in the sleeping bag. And then it takes some time before we start to get out the mode of ignorance. So the real work begins is to give up the desire for these things. And Prabhupada explains that we cannot become desireless. When we talk about becoming desireless, it means becoming free from personal self-motivated desires and aligning our desires with the desires of Krishna and the Parampara. So in the beginning, there's many things we might not want to do, but we have to use our intelligence to understand, well, I might not want to do it, but I need to do it. I should do this, so until it comes to the point where I want to do it. So if we can use our intelligence to understand, I can't, this is what I should be wanting to do, this is what I should be doing, then let me sadhana bhakti. Let me mechanically do it to begin with. I'm going through the motions, but in due course of time, then we're aiming to not just go through the motions until we're tired of doing that and we give it up, thinking, oh, it doesn't work. But to cultivate that spirit of aligning our desires with the desires of the spiritual master. So in this process of surrender, when Krishna talks about surrender, sometimes we think that surrender's a bad word. Right? We get afraid of it. Anybody ever feel afraid when they hear the word surrender or when they have to surrender? Yep. And sometimes, almost on a day-to-day basis, we have to surrender to something we don't really want to, but we know, well, if we don't, then I'm going to miss out, or I'm not going to be doing my duty, or I'm not going to be in the right standing, or I'm going to miss out on a chance for advancement, or whatever. So this is, Krishna knows that we're afraid. That's why he says, do not fear. When he says, Sarvadhamma Prityaja, surrender unto me, do not fear. Because he knows we're afraid to surrender. But he said, do not fear, because when we surrender, then the fear goes. It's the fear which is holding us back from surrendering. And that's the very thing which we will get rid of by surrendering. So here Prabhupada makes this point that with this yatamat tatapat, then everyone is thinking their opinion is as valid as the next guy's. Well, if their opinion is nonsense and the next guy's opinion is nonsense, then yeah. But according to Krishna's opinion, that's what we're interested in. When Krishna concludes with the Bhagavad-Gita, he says to Arjuna that, okay, I've given you everything. This is my opinion. You should. This is what you want to do. Then, well, oh no, it's up to you what you want to do. But this is my opinion. If you're interested in my opinion, this is the path forward, and this is the path backward. Then, if you're interested in my opinion, this is the one I recommend. But it's up to you. So Krishna doesn't interfere. So if we have some opinion, we have to see how does this line up with Krishna's opinion. If it doesn't, then we shouldn't be too attached to it, because it's simply we may make a fool of ourselves, or we just simply cultivate attachments. We're watering the weeds. And of course, in the beginning, we're not completely self-realized souls, so we're going to have to put a certain amount of faith. We have a certain amount of faith already because of how Krishna consciousness has benefited us already. So therefore we can think, okay, when if someone gives you a map, I won't use the example of sat-nav, because sat-navs can let you down. There's some crazy examples of people ending up practically in another country. But if someone shows you on a map, say you've never been to London and you want to drive to London from here, so they give you a map and say, okay, this is the route down, you go past this, and then finally you get there. So as you're going along, you see on the map, oh yeah, there's Carlisle, there's Preston, there's Manchester, that's right, that's on the map. Next should be Birmingham, oh yeah, there's Birmingham. And you gain confidence, yeah, it looks like and you see signs for London, 100 miles, 50 miles. And then it's not that you expect to get there and there'll be nothing. By the time you get there, you're sure there's going to be a London. And you can speak to people that are coming out of there, yeah, I've just been there. Yeah, I've been there, I know what it's like. So this is our situation. These Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, these are the map to verify the existence of the spiritual world and the path which takes us back there. And we can see by their living example that this process certainly does work, because if I was like them, they're free from doubt. If I can be like them, we're aspiring to be like them. So people have role models in life, and our role models are the different incarnations of the Lord, and not that we try to imitate them, but we're inspired by their pastimes and by their instructions. And our predecessor acharyas, older God brothers and God sisters. And in fact, we can become inspired by anyone as long as we can clearly see that it's in line with the devotional path. So in Kali Yuga, and we can see that this is, most schools of thought see the world as being come into existence at one time, and it's going on a lineal path, and it comes to one point where it's finished, and that's the end. But we understand from the Vedic literatures that it's a cyclical rotation, a cyclical pattern of creation, maintaining for some time, and then annihilation, and then creation, maintain annihilation. This is going on and on to facilitate the living entities who want to enjoy separately from Krishna. And therefore that question that Satyananda Maharaj asked Srila Prabhupada, why did Krishna make the material world? He says, Krishna never made it, you made it. So we made it because it's here for us, because we want it. So Krishna gave us this material world because we want to enjoy separately from him. But in our attempts to do so, we become frustrated because it's incompatible. It's just not where we belong. Like a fish out of water, we're only satisfied when we're back in the water. So similarly, Krishna comes here and sends his devotees here to remind us time and time again, yada yada hidharmasya, that this is not where we belong. There is another world. We belong there, and that's where we will be happy. So we're trying to be happy here, but we don't know how to be happy here. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur reminds us that there's nothing of any substance in this material world except for two things. And what are those? Sorry? Holy name and the jiva, that's it. So even the non-devotees, they are still of substance because they are spirit souls and they are devotees, ultimately. But certainly, especially for the devotees, the chanting of the holy name is the only source of bliss in this material world, apart from prasadam, so it's prasadam time. Any questions? Yeah, what's on the menu? Any comments or corrections? Okay, it's gone. Guru Vindaki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Gaur Premanande,
Jai
Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki.